for the new year. You notice that when you came in, we didn't have our normal series folders or anything because it's just one night of worship, but we did give you the little New Year's Eve night worship cards. On the back there, definitely, if you're a guest of ours tonight, you're a first-timer, please be sure when you leave, do us a favor, go online to newlife247.com and fill out our online connection card to let us know that you were here. That way we can follow up with you this week. We're not going to harass you, and we're not going to put you on an email list where we send you like 15 junk emails every single day or anything like that. But we would like to express to you our gratitude for being here with us tonight and invite you to come back next Sunday as we begin a new series that we're calling Grace is Greater. Man, I'm so excited about how we're going to kick off the new year with that series. And so it's going to be a super, super exciting year for us. But do that for us. We greatly appreciate that. Also, typically in your series folders, you'll notice there's a place there to take notes. So you don't have that here tonight. So if you'd like to take notes and follow along with tonight's message, go on to if you don't already have the Bible app on your phone or your tablet or anything like that, go ahead and go to the App Store and download that really quick. We have really good Wi-Fi here, so you should be able to do that. And then click on the events in the Bible app, and you should find the New Life Church event happening right now. And that'll give you an opportunity to save tonight's notes and fill those in there. If not, then, I don't know, use a pen or a Sharpie and jot it down on your arm or something. But tonight's message is something that you will not, trust me, want to forget. And it's not going to be because I'm so articulate and I'm hyped up on a monster or anything like that. It's simply because tonight's word for you is something new. When you think about the word new, doesn't it just sort of give you a sense of excitement? It doesn't matter what it is. If it's new, man, I'm interested. Give it to me. What are we talking about? All of us we just had our Christmas and opening up all of our gifts and getting new things. Man, that's exciting. My family got up and my girls, man, they were tearing into those gifts. Ella, she finally got that Barbie dream house that she was asking for so many months. Elin was so excited she got an iPod Touch. Like, that was her thing. She didn't know that was coming. But it was like, oh my God! You know, something new. It's exciting. I got my wife a brand new hand-bound leather Bible. It's like super nice. From Paul's Leather Company. I'm just going to give them a plug because they did an awesome job. Go look them up this evening when you get time or this week. Paul's Leather Company. They do some awesome handcrafted leather Bibles, so it's super exciting. And then I got some really cool stuff. My wife knows me, loves me, knows how much I love music, and I got a new, first one I've ever had, so new to me, but one of those portable Bluetooth speakers. I take it anywhere and play music, man. It's just one of my favorite gifts. And so I'm sure over this week, you have been just sort of relishing in the excitement of those new things. And maybe over 2017, you've experienced some new things in your life. Some of you may have gotten a new house or maybe a new car. Our church, we're committed to growing our church one way or the other. We've had a lot of new babies born. All right, it's like, listen, whether you invite or not, we are going to grow one way or the other. If it's from the inside out, that's okay. But we've had a lot of new additions to families in our church, and that's always exciting. The joy that is brought with a new child, someone into our church and into our family. We had one family in our church that got news that they're adopting from Haiti, and they finally got the approval that they're going to have, by this time next year, they will have their new daughter in their home. And that's something that they're excited about. And as a church, we're excited to bring that little girl into our church. So new things are just so cool. And when you think about maybe taking a vacation to somewhere new, somewhere you've never been before, and how exciting that is, and leading up to that time when you go. And listen, guys, here's what I want us to think about. Doesn't it just make the hair stand up on end when you think about God doing something new? Maybe when you start thinking about, you hear somebody talking about God doing something new in your life, new in your church. Here's a verse that I want us to try to commit to memory for this next year. It's very short, so I know all of those of you who complain about, oh, I can't memorize stuff anywhere. I don't even know where I put my keys. Listen, this is easy. This is an exciting verse. This is what I'd like for us to commit to memory and declare over our lives and over our church for 2018. It's Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19, where God says, "See, I am doing a new thing. I'm doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." You see, I am absolutely convinced that God is on the brink of doing something new, something exciting in every one of our lives. We are on the cusp of God doing something new here at our church. Things that we have never seen before. Things we've never experienced before. Brand new things. But we need to be ready. We're on the cusp of experiencing God and His newness in a way like we have never before. But a couple things that it's going to require for us: obedience, sensitivity. We have to do what God says when He says to do it. We've got to be sensitive to His Spirit and know when God says move, when God says pull the trigger, when He says do this, go there, we better be ready to go. If we're going to experience new things. I believe that if we'll allow God, if we'll partner with Him, that He's going to do things in every one of our lives that'll blow our minds. Things we thought would never be possible. There's going to be breakthroughs. There's going to be barriers and walls that come down. There's going to be answered prayer. Things that we thought it would never happen. In a million years, I bet you in 2018, God will do it. Because He said, I'm going to do new things. He's not a God of old things. He's not a God of the used to and always has been. He's a God of new things. But we got to be ready. We got to be sensitive to the moving of His Holy Spirit. I believe there's going to be some times that, for some of us, some things that perhaps seem to be old, God may make like new again. Maybe it's a marriage or a relationship that you thought was dead. You might as well just bury it. I believe God's going to breathe new life into those areas. And so when you read a verse like this, the first question that people want to ask is, well, what is this new thing? What is it? What's God going to do? You see, that's the thing about God. He rarely ever gives us the details up front. That's why He says in His Word that He requires us to walk by faith and not by sight. He wants us to trust Him. And typically He will only give us a sketch. Sort of just a rough outline. That's what a sketch is. A rough outline. A vague description of what the final outcome will be. It's like when you're building a house or you're going into like our construction project. All we have is a sketch. All we have is sort of a model of what the new thing will be so that we can somewhat envision it. And so for us, while we don't have all of the details, and I can't give those to you tonight. I don't know what God's going to do in your life in 2018. I don't know exactly what He's going to do in the life of this church. But Isaiah 43:19 says He's going to do new things. And I believe that verse also shows us a sketch. We get a little glimpse of what those new things are going to look like. And so going off this particular passage, I believe that next year is going to be a time of disclosure. A time when God begins to reveal things to us and begins to tell us things that He hasn't told us before. He asked the question in this particular passage. He says, I'm going to do new things. It's going to spring forth. Do you not perceive it? Are you not aware of it? You see, God's plan is always, before He does a new thing, to let His people know about it. God never keeps us in the dark. You see, here's the thing. We always want to talk about, well, how do I know God's will? You know, what's the magic equation to knowing God's will, there is no magic equation. I can guarantee you, God wants you to know His will for your life more than you want to know it. He's ready. He wants to tell you. Are you listening? Do you not perceive it? When God begins to do something new, His desire is always to tell His people first. And see, that's why I think in this coming year, it's going to be extremely important for us, individually and corporately, to pay attention, to be attentive and sensitive to the Spirit of God so that we don't miss the move of God, so that we don't miss what God's saying, what God's doing, and where God's leading. You see, in the context, what Isaiah was talking about here, it was the Babylonian captivity. And in chapter 42, God spoke to His people and He says, "See, the former things have taken place." And specifically, again, He's talking about the Babylonian captivity, the former things, because God had pronounced judgment on His people, and He told them, "You're going into exile. This is going to happen." And He said, the former things, what I promised yesterday, years ago, look, those happened. That came to pass. The former things have taken place. New things I declare. Something new is coming. Something is on the horizon. Before they spring into being, I announce them to you. What a great promise. You see, that's where some of us are. Maybe we feel like we've been in exile. Maybe we feel like we've been punished. We've been experienced consequences or judgment. Listen, even if we've messed up, God's desire is to do a new thing and to let you know about it. God's love endures forever. His anger only lasts for a moment. God's going to do some new things. And so He's talking about this Babylonian captivity. The former things I have promised, they have come to pass. Now I'm declaring new things. Get ready to step into something new, something fresh. Get ready to step into a new level of life. But before you can do that, before I can declare and bring about these new things, I want to take you one step back to Isaiah 43, verse 18. Before He declares the new things, listen to what He says here. He says, forget the former things. See, this is an instruction that some of us really need to take seriously tonight. He says, forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. Forget the past. Let go of the past. As I heard one pastor say, if you don't let go of the past, it won't let go of you. It won't let go of your future. Listen to me. If you don't let the past die, it won't let you live. There's some things that we need to let go of before we can step into the new things that God has prepared. Forget last year. Forget the year before that. Forget last year and all of its troubles. Listen, forget even the successes and triumphs. Take a moment right now to reflect and to thank God for what He's done in your life. But just know this, you can't live tomorrow on yesterday's blessing. It can't be done because God says, my mercies, my blessings are new every day. As the children of Israel wandered through the desert, and God rained down quail and manna for them every single day, He told them, don't try to keep from one day to the next my provisions. He was blessing them every day with new manna, new meat. And what they tried to store up, if they tried to keep it till the next day, they woke up and it was molded, it was spoiled. Because you can't live today on yesterday's blessing. And you can't live tomorrow on today's blessing. Because every single day, God declares something new. Forget the past. Let go of some things. This verse, as we read it, not only could it be referencing Israel and their Babylonian captivity and the release from that, But because Isaiah was one of the prophets who prophesied more about the coming Christ, about the Messiah, than any other prophet, I believe this is a look forward, even for Isaiah and the nation of Israel, to the coming of Jesus, the arrival of the Messiah. And if we can agree tonight that that is a possibility, that is one way to interpret this particular passage, then I want to remind you of a guy named John the Baptist. John the Baptist was considered the forerunner of Jesus Christ. And he was the one who was spoken of. There was a voice crying out in the wilderness, "Make ready the way of the Lord." See, John the Baptist was the voice of God declaring a new thing. The old thing was coming to a close. The new thing was about to spring forth. And what was God doing? Letting His people know. Get ready. Get ready for a changing of the guard. Get ready for a new thing. See, God's going to do something new in our church. He's going to do something new in your life. And the first ones to know about it? Us. See, that's why you're here tonight. That's why I'm preaching this message. Because God's desire is to tell you what He has in store. What a tremendous blessing. What an exciting time to be a part of His kingdom in our church. 2018 is going to be a year of disclosure. It's also going to be a year of development. Notice there in verse 19 again, he says about this new thing, he says, "Now it springs up." This is the part of this passage that indicates and speaks to growth. God is describing to us, He's saying, just like a shoot, a sprout springs from a seed, so will the new things that God has planned for us. What looks like is never going to happen. What looks like is just lying there and decaying and dying, all of a sudden will spring up with new life, new hope. And so I believe here at New Life, we're about to enter into a time of phenomenal growth. I believe our church is sitting on the very edge of not only God growing us tremendously by adding to our number those who are being saved, but I believe this year God is going to allow us to see and to experience a spiritual growth of His believers and His family like we've never experienced before, because I believe this year many of you are going to start taking very seriously and start prioritizing community with other believers, volunteering and serving, becoming a part of the church that you say you're a part of, attending a life group, whatever that means and whatever it looks like for you. I believe we're going to notice a time of spiritual growth and development in our church like we've never had before. I think we're going to see growth that can only be attributed to a move of God. And see, that's my prayer. Every time I pray for our church, I'm like, God, let us grow in such a way that the onlookers can't help but, one, to take notice, but also to comment, that can't be of them. That's a God thing. That's my prayer. And see, when that begins to happen, that's a new thing. And I believe God is poised, ready to do it. But here's the thing. If that's going to take place, if 2018 is going to be a year of development, a year of growth, I believe it's going to be contingent upon two issues. One, change. Change. For growth to take place, it must be accompanied by change. Nothing grows that doesn't change. Sometimes that can be extremely uncomfortable. We don't necessarily like it. We don't like the process. You know, it pushes the boundaries of what we consider to be, normal. We're comfortable with normal. And it begins to push us to the edge of that. But listen, if we're going to grow, things can't stay the same. And whether I'm speaking about our church or about your life. There was one guy who said about churches who are resistant to change, they said that, the last 7 words of every dying church is, "We've never done it that way before." And that's true with every single one of us. That's true with our lives. You know that you are beginning to decay spiritually when God begins to try to push you in a new direction and you say, "No, I ain't never done it like that." No. Let's not do that. Let's welcome the newness of God and embrace the changes that might be necessary in order to experience it. Another thing that the development is going to be contingent upon, not only change, but commitment. We're going to have to show faithfulness, because I believe and I'm convinced that God honors with great growth those who show great commitment, those who show great faithfulness. It's this time every year that people want to talk about New Year's resolutions. I'm going to do this in 2000 whatever. And maybe tomorrow, after you've processed all the donuts and the sugar and everything, you're saying, 2018, I'm gonna hit the gym, or I'm gonna lose 10 pounds, or I'm gonna be better with my finances, or I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. Listen, the only way you're gonna reach that goal is by commitment. You got to be committed to that, not just for January the 1st, but you got to be committed January, February, all the way through December. Then you'll see it happen. And for us to experience the kind of growth that I believe God is ready to bless us with, we got to show some commitment. It can't be sort of that half in, half out. I'm somewhat committed. We got to be all in. Every single one of us, all in, 100% committed. And see, whatever needs to take place in order for you to express that here at New Life, I want to challenge you tonight. Make up in your mind right now that you're going to do that. I'm going to commit. And it's not just going to be a January thing. December 2018, I'm going to look back and say, wow, at the difference God has made in my life because I committed to something. For the first time, I committed to something. What a difference that makes. That's the only way to experience new things. The third thing about this sketch that I believe that God is revealing, not only is it going to be a time of disclosure and a time of development, but I believe this year is going to be a time of direction. I want you to notice here in verse 19 again about this new thing. God says, "I'm making a way in the wilderness." As He does so many times in His Word, God here, He promises again guidance for our life. But here's the thing. I want you to catch this. He says, "I will make a way." All right, and we hear that and we think, all right, God will make a little pathway, like a little rabbit trail through a thorn bush. And all I have to do is search it out and find it, and if I can squeeze down small enough, I'll be able to get through it. Not even close. Not even in the ballpark is that what God's talking about. The Hebrew language here for what God is saying, this way that He's talking about, is not a narrow trail or a pathway. God is declaring, when I do this new thing, I'm going to make a roadway. I'm going to carve a highway through places that no one has ever been before. Can you imagine that? God doing something that new, that great in your life and in our church? It's going to be obvious. This is the way we go. I'm going to take you down this road that seems at the time no one's ever been this way before. But God has carved a path. God has cleared a 4-lane highway through this thing. Listen, I'm excited about that. One of the things that I'm believing God for this year, 2018, I'm believing we're going to see dozers and things out here moving dirt for our new expansion. And I've been talking about that a long time. Pastors, when I shared it with them, they told me, they said, "Brandon, let me tell you something about churches and expansion. It's always going to take longer than you think. It's going to cost more than you think. But take the time and spend the money and you'll be happy in the end." Never in a million years did I think 3 years from that moment I'd still be sitting here wondering, well, gosh knows, how long is this going to take? But it's taken a lot longer. a lot longer. But I believe we're on the brink. I believe in 2018, God's going to bring some earth movers, literally and spiritually, and carve a highway for New Life Church. I believe that with all my heart. He's going to do a new, unexperienced thing. And as we travel sort of into this, whether it's as a church or in our individual lives, as we travel into this unknown and unexplored territory, I believe God then blesses us with two experiences. One, the blessing of fearlessness. As we follow and trust God, and we commit to His ways, we follow His direction, we begin to well up with courage like never before. We experience the fearlessness of God. Because I'm telling you, listen, the wilderness can be a scary place. I know. I've been there, lost in it before. You guys know I do a lot of hunting. Just yesterday, I went out walking. I was thinking, man, it's my last opportunity to go deer hunting. I sat for like 10 minutes and got bored. I'm like, I got to get up from here. I got to go out there and hunt them out. And so I spent about 2 or 3 hours yesterday walking 100 acres. Didn't see a thing. All right, but I knew my way around. Occasionally, I'll go to the mountains of Virginia, the George Washington National Forest, and go hunting. Listen, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres. And I've been lost there. And that's a scary feeling. That is a hopeless feeling. I've wandered around in that wilderness for hours, having no sense of direction whatsoever. And after a few hours, you can't help but to start thinking, this is my mindset. What if I don't make it out of here? What if nobody can find me? What if it starts to get dark and I need a fire, can't start one, and freeze to death? How am I going to find food? Where am I going to find water? My solution was, if I do get fire started, I will just burn the whole forest. And hope somebody, find the ignition point, and there I will be. You can just drag my dead body out of there. But see, not having any kind of direction, you sort of feel hopeless. Obviously, I made it out because I'm standing right here. There is not a greater feeling on earth to be lost and then find your way. Like when I finally found a trail that led me to a bigger path, an access road, that then led me to the highway. Listen, I still didn't know exactly which direction to go, but I had a sense of relief just because I found my way back to civilization. It doesn't matter which way I go, I will find people. See, that's a great feeling. You see, my concern for some of you here in our church is that for the past year, maybe even longer, you've just been lost and wandering. Just roaming around in the wilderness. Listen, I know you feel helpless, hopeless. It's a scary thing. But I'm here to declare to you tonight, 2018, God's going to do a new thing. God's going to bring direction into your life. And listen, when He does, you don't have to be afraid anymore. You don't have to be afraid. His word says in 2 Timothy 1:7, for the Spirit that God gave us does not make us timid. We don't have to be afraid. When we have the Spirit of God in our life and leading us, we don't have to fear anything. But His Spirit gives us power, love, and self-discipline. Gives us a sense of direction. But not only do I believe we'll experience the blessing of fearlessness, we're going to experience the blessing of fruitfulness. See, a lot of times when we start thinking about and talking about a wilderness, in many people's minds, what comes to mind and sort of the picture is sort of a dry, barren, deserted place. But do you realize that most wildernesses in the world are not like that at all? Most wildernesses are actually very fruitful places, full of life And so what I'm saying to you tonight is that God is prepared. He's promising to do something new in your life and in the life of our church. He's going to make a way into a wilderness, a place we don't have to be afraid because it's a place of fruitfulness. It's a place of abundance. It's a place full of things we've never experienced before, where we will see things that we've never seen before. I want you to remember the promise that God gave through the prophet Jeremiah. Jeremiah 29 verse 11, he says, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Listen, if God has declared something, you can bank on it. It's going to happen. He says, I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope and to give you a future. You see what God's doing here tonight? God is preparing us for a year of disclosure. God's preparing our hearts and our lives for a year of development and a year of direction. Man, but here's the awesome part. This is the last thing I'm going to share with you. 2018, God's sketch here tonight reveals that it'll be a time of drenching. Drenching. I mean, just dripping wet with the goodness and the abundance of God. This last statement, this is where he addresses those dry, barren places. He says, I'm going to make a way, a highway through the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Think about that. Those dry, barren, dead places in your life. Those places, those things that you had written off and lost hope for. God says, I'm going to bring to life those areas. I mean, just think about that for a second. When God begins to perform a new thing, He said it's going to be like a stream in a wasteland, like a river in the desert. What happens when rain begins to fall on a desert? What happens when streams begin to flow through a dry, barren place? It comes to life. It's re-energized. Life is resurrected. There's a renewed sense of hope, and that's what God is saying. He wants to be like a river in the dry places of your life. He wants to refresh and re-energize the weary. He wants to resurrect those things that many have considered dead. And He's going to do it not only in our personal lives, but in the life of our church. Things that we had written off and thought were impossible, God said, I'm going to do it. Just wait and see. It's going to come to life. Now, this final thing, I want you to listen to what God says in Revelation chapter 21, verse 6. And I want you to think about this in context to what we've been talking about tonight, the new things that God has declared. Because what Revelation 21, verse 6 says, and this is the end of the book, folks, is that from God's point of view, though these things have not come to pass for us, from His perspective, they're already done. He's already declared them, and they're done. And so He says, it is done. Listen, if you can't memorize Isaiah 43:19, remember those three words right there. And declare that over the dry, dead, barren places, over the new things that you are believing God to do in your life for 2018. Pray that when you speak of our church in your conversation with God, it is done. I am the Alpha, I am the Omega, the beginning and the end, and to the thirsty I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life. This is God's message for every single one of us tonight. God's going to do something new in you. He's going to do something new in me. He's going to do something new in us. Let's don't miss it. Let's don't miss it. Let's go where He says go. Let's do what He says do. And I'll give you one last challenge. Let's commit to taking somebody else with us. Like I said, next week we start a brand new series called Grace is Greater. And I want you to think about one person right now that you're going to bring to church with you next Sunday. I'm going to show my commitment to my church. I'm going to show that I believe in the new and greater things that God is going to do in 2018. And we're going to kick this thing off right. And I'm going to bring somebody with me. Because we want others to experience this new thing with us. Listen, don't keep the blessings of God to yourself. Share them with somebody. Let's pray, and then we're going to begin.